Welcome to another episode of The Unseen Paranormal, where some of the scariest things are unseen. I'm your host, Eric Freeman. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This week on The Unseen Paranormal, we welcome paranormal investigator, researcher, and author Debe Branning. Debbie is a founding member of MVD Ghost Chasers out in Arizona, and author of several books including Sleeping with Ghosts, Haunted Phoenix, The Graveyard Shift, and our main topic today, Arizona's Haunted Route 66. You can find Debbie's books on Amazon, Kindle, or at mvdghostchasers.com. Hey, Debbie, thanks for joining us today.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about Route 66.
It's such a great place. I mean, I've lived in Arizona for, 30-some years, and this was the first time I actually did the whole Route 66. I've always done little bits and pieces of it, but we did the whole thing. That made it so much fun.
Yeah, from one end of Arizona to the other, and it's pretty awesome.
Right. And the good thing about this book, it was written during the pandemic. So when I got my little crew together, we would do one section at a time. So we started out on the western end and, went for a few days, came home, made sure everybody was still safe and good. And then we'd wait a couple weeks and go back out, do the next section. So it was all done in 4 sections with the same group of people. And it was really kind of a good thing because we learned that a pandemic wouldn't mean that we're not going to travel anymore. We're still going to travel and still see historic places, such as Route 66.
Yeah, and it probably made it a little easier because there wasn't anybody else out. Like y'all were some of the only people.
Yeah, and in some cases we did, have to bypass a few places we did want to stop at. But on the other hand, we weren't with the big crowd. So that made it nice too. I think our biggest crowd was in Williams, Arizona, because they were still doing the Grand Canyon train and everybody was, spending the night there getting ready for the train. But the next day they were all gone. And so we had the whole town to ourselves to explore. So that made it really great too.
Yeah. Before we kind of take a deep dive into it, I just want to know, how did you get into, because you've been writing paranormal books and investigating for a long, long time, because MVD Ghost Chasers was founded back in 94, so long before the TV shows and that type of stuff.
Exactly. And a lot of people go, what is MVD? Well, I worked for the motor vehicle department in Arizona for 25 years. And the original team, was members of my working staff. We all worked together, and on weekends we would get together and head out to haunted places. So that's basically how our team got together. And we decided that we really liked historic locations, so that's what we've been investigating mostly all the years. We do some, house calls now and then, but we prefer to investigate haunted hotels, haunted restaurants, train depots, wherever it might take us. But that's how we got together, and I've just always been interested in spirits and ghosts and haunted places since I was young. And this was just the perfect opportunity to get a bunch of people together, especially like your coworkers, and go ghost hunting.
Yeah, back before it was even a thing. That's when I started back in the 90s when I was a teenager, and I didn't even know what a ghost hunter was. Like, I just knew that me and my friends wanted to go figure out what's beyond us.
I know. And there wasn't any instructions anywhere back in them days either. I mean, there was very few books about what to do. It was very, very vague. And like I said, there were no TV shows. And that's what's made it kind of exciting, because we did it from scratch and figured it all out. And then as things, progressed, I think Ghost Hunters at that time was probably the first one that came on aboard. And we learned a lot from them and progressed from there. And that's how it's always been. We just keep learning more. We meet people all the time then from other teams, learn their techniques. We share. And, before you know it, everybody's learning from each other, which makes it really great. Sharing ideas, sharing stories. And there were so many stories about Arizona that I wanted to share, and a lot of people didn't want to share their stories. They wanted their, have the stories for themselves. And I thought, I'm going to share everything.
Yeah.
And so other people can travel. And that's what Sleeping with Ghosts was my first book. about the haunted hotels and bed and breakfasts. And I thought that would be really fun for people that like to travel around the state, and they'll know what rooms to stay in if they like ghosts, or stay out of if they don't like ghosts. So that made it really kind of fun. And of course, then I had to follow up with the, dining with the dead. So they could have a place to dine and eat as well. So a lot of people tell me they carry those two books in their cars when they travel around. So then, that, like I said, they know where to sleep, they know where to dine, and that makes it really kind of fun for everyone.
Yeah, and I love the title "Sleeping with a Ghost" because it kind of gets your attention of like, what is this about?
Yeah, yeah. This is like sleeping and sharing a room with a ghost, and
Yeah,
dining with the dead is having a meal.
right.
And then, of course, yeah, yeah. So those two are probably, the ones that for people that travel around the state like to take with them. And then, of course, the Grand Canyon one came along by another publisher because there was no ghost stories about the Grand Canyon out at that time. Very, very few tales. Well, I had to do a lot of digging to get stories for that book. That meant going up to the Grand Canyon, talking to the rangers, talking to the raft runners and the mule runners, people that run stores up there, and getting all their stories, because there is a lot of things that happened up at the Grand Canyon. That was a very sacred place for the Native Americans. So there's a lot of cool energy up there that a lot of people don't know about. So yeah, that one was a great one to work on as well. And you take your friends with you and let them share the experience and and the adventure. You get a lot of good stories that way, and they never forget it either.
Yeah, and Arizona, I mean, huge history there because people going out west and being in the desert and kind of the Wild West thing going on, and just a lot of crazy, interesting history.
Yeah, it was the Wild West, because a lot of these people came from the East, and they were, escaping their life there. Some of them were criminals back east, came out here to start a new life, but ended up as criminals out here as well. So a lot of people came and to little towns, and they were buried. And people go, well, we don't know who this person was. We just know his name was John, but we have no other information. And it's because a lot of times they didn't want people to know who they were, what their life was back east. A lot of their friends never heard from them again once they left the East Coast. So there's a lot of strange mysteries out here in the West.
Yeah, and Arizona is just it's a nice state. Like I said, lots of history, lots of really cool places, and lots of Native American history as well.
Right, right. The Native American history, and we luckily we have some of people on our crew that study that, and they also are counselors for some of them, and so they know a lot when they work with me, and they give me a lot of insight of what why the spirits of certain areas might be haunted or have spirits in them. And the Native Americans are very protective of their spiritual aspects, so you have to be real respectful when you're dealing with those particular spirits. And as well, as long as you do, you're going to have good results with your encounters.
Yeah. And a lot of the places are, these interesting outdoor places that we like to go, like Meteor Crater Park out there in Arizona, the Grand Canyon. These were sacred places to those people.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you got to approach them with a little more respect than you would going into, a Victorian house, 1800s house or something of this kind.
Exactly. Yeah, we did the Apache Death Cave one during Route 66, and we found that to be really highly intense and kind of an emotional experience. We had a couple of us were able to actually hike down the little walkway in the bridge and go a little bit into the cave. And they said too, just the energy that they felt down there was something really strong they've never felt before. But when we were kind of up on the upper parts, sitting halfway down, and yes, that's something that I think everybody needs to experience as far as the energies in a Native American area, and that because that was the site of where several Apaches were murdered by the Navajo because they had been, fighting against each other. The Apaches were hiding out, but the Navajos figured out they were in the cave, and they just kind of blocked that cave entrance, let everything on fire, and so it was kind of a horrendous death they let. But it was just still a remarkable experience to be there where that happened.
Yeah, and a crazy story of, tragedy. But
Yes.
so, like I said, we're going to talk about Arizona's haunted Route 66 today, and
Mhm.
that's your latest book. But
Yes.
you're always doing stuff for the History Press. I love the History Press. I talk to a lot of their authors because I love what they do with their books. Of it being you learned a lot about history, and then you get entertained by the ghost stories. So it's a little bit of both.
Exactly. That makes it kind of fun to do. And I love looking up the history. And then when you learn some of the ghost stories, then you start digging in the old newspapers. You're looking, before you know it, you're looking up death certificates, on the ancestry, doing their genealogy, learning all about their families. You kind of go down these little rabbit holes, as my friends, always says.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I really like about this Haunted America series too, with the History Press.
And so Route 66 actually runs from Chicago to Santa Monica, and it's
Hmm.
a little under 2,500 miles. But a good chunk of it, 385 miles, it runs through Arizona from east to west or west to east across the whole state.
Right, right. We actually have a pretty good chunk, like you said, and there's a couple sections that you're actually, driving on the actual road, especially in the western half of Arizona, kind of the back part where Kingman is, and Peach Springs, and some of that area is actual the road itself. A lot of it you're on the freeway and you have to get off and drive through the towns such as Holbrook and in Winslow and Flagstaff, but you're still on Route 66 and the buildings are still there. But like I said, when you're on that last part of the route from about, oh gosh, Seligman West, you're on the actual Mother Road.
And Route 66, that was the main thoroughfare through the middle of the country before we had our freeway interstate system.
Exactly. That was the way to go. That was the most popular route through this, central part of the country. And I think it'd be great just to do the whole thing. I'm thinking about that, maybe just flying to Chicago, renting a car, making my way all the way across. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be fun because you get to see these small towns that people don't really travel through anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the interstate system bypassed a lot of them, and it kind of unfortunately killed some of these smaller towns that were dependent on those tourist dollars and those travelers.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened in Arizona as well. Some of the smaller towns, they're not there anymore. I can remember driving through Winslow back in the day, before that opened up. I can remember driving through Ashland and, parts of the western half. And then all of a sudden, you didn't go through that anymore because you just went on the freeway and it was kind of lost some of the fun.
Yeah, and some of the interesting places too are kind of lost along the way. Like we were talking before we started recording that when I was a kid, my dad was a truck driver, and I
Hmm.
actually stayed at the Wigwam Village Motel, which is it's kind of that iconic thing, and people have seen it in movies. But it's the teepees that you can stay in that are like they're modern buildings, but they look like teepees.
Yeah, yeah, over in Holbrook. And we stayed there when we were doing our research. That was one of the things, I promised we'll stay in the teepees. And it was really kind of neat because they look so small on the outside, but you go in and it's like a regular sized hotel room. It's just very iconic to be there, knowing that all of these people traveled on vacations and stopped there. We were like sitting around thinking, like, think about all the kids that came away kind of like probably had their little cowboy hat on, and they were all so excited they were going to sleep in a teepee. How cool would that be to go back to school and tell their friends that? We didn't really pick up on any energies, although one night we sat there and just kind of try to pick up on traveling spirits, and we did pick up on a couple. We figured it was like grandparents with their grandson, and that's when like we said, we could just feel their energy of how excited they were to be traveling on Route 66 and doing the old West thing in Arizona.
Yeah, and it was like you said, it's a place where kids were happy to be there, and the parents were
Hmm.
happy, and they were kind of on either vacation or driving across country and excited to be doing that. And so, yeah, I could see, I'm sure lots of motels and hotels, they have tragic endings for people, but because people go to hotels and motels to do bad things,
Right,
but
right.
and you wrote a lot about a lot of hotels and motels that do have activity across the state.
Exactly, exactly. The Monte Vista Hotel in Flagstaff is probably known to be one of the more haunted hotels. I don't know, and even in America, you see that one on TV quite a bit about various hauntings. We didn't pick up anything that time, but I've been there a few other times. I have a friend I talk about in the book where she was staying there and was walking down a hallway, saw a man, walking down the hallway towards her, but she was taking pictures. She thought, well, I don't want to take pictures and have this guy wonder what I'm doing here. So she stopped, watched him. The man walked up to a door, went through the motions of putting the key in the door, but instead of opening it up, he actually walked through the door. So that was kind of a weird incident there. They also always talk about the Phantom Bellboy who works at the Monte Vista. And for a long time, I thought this was one of those made up little tales until I did find out there was a bellboy who was murdered in the basement of the hotel during Prohibition time. And he would make, deliveries to some of the rooms. So that's actually a true story, which I, through reading a lot of old newspapers, that's how you found some of your best ghost stories.
Yeah, and it's also awesome to always connect a real person with the ghost stories and kind of prove that, that person really existed.
Exactly, exactly. Very important. Yes.
Another thing that you wrote a lot, quite a few in the book, is the trading post, which is kind of a lost thing nowadays. There are still a few, but that's something that you don't see very much anymore.
I know. It was the trading post kind of made me sad because probably when you were a kid going through there, you would stop there and they were still, the so-called tomahawk stores where you could buy all the little, little itsy little things. And we've stopped at a few of them now. They're pretty much in ruins. There's graffiti over most of them. They're torn up. We did, like a little bit of urban exploring at the trading post because, due to the part that they're all kind of in disarray. It wasn't like when you were a kid, but we did stop at as many as we could that still had their frontage there, like Twin Arrows and things like that, to see them, just to say that we were there.
You've seen them like peppered in movies too. Like a lot of this is in pop culture. I think the last one that I remember seeing in a movie was in Zombieland. They actually go into one, and start breaking stuff because the world is ended and whatever. But that was a thing in Zombieland that I found was interesting. That reminded me of my childhood. Like you were saying, we had stopped at some of those when they were back in the 80s when I was growing up, and they were still a lot of them operating.
Right, like in the movie Starman, when they go to the one there near the meteor crater, was still there, but it is in disarray too. I mean, it was just like very disappointing that none of them can be saved at this point. They're pretty much gone. That part always kind of made me sad. And if we stopped at places and movies from like Easy Rider, couple different places, the bridge and the little motel where they plan to stay, things like that. And then of course too, the just old movies as well. So it's kind of an iconic route just because all these old movies and movie stars are attached to the road as well.
Yeah, and there you have a story that I found fascinating. I heard you tell it on Sam Baltruse's podcast about the bar that has the tunnels underneath.
Oh yeah, the little restaurant.
Yeah,
and it had the bar. Yeah, that was kind of a unique experience to kind of relive because about 10 years ago I did a paranormal investigation up at this location, and one of the guys in our group they were telling us about there was a tunnel underneath the restaurant, underneath the bar. It was an old trading post at one time. So they went underneath there and they said that it was like really creepy because then they got scared because they didn't know where they're going to end up. So when we went back on this Route 66 trip, I asked the waitress, is there still, tunnels underneath the building, underneath, is there like a trap door? And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. She was new. So she calls the manager, gets the manager on the phone. First, next thing I know, I'm talking to the manager and asking him, well, I was here 10 years ago. There's a trap door. There was tunnels. He goes, oh, yeah, they're still there. Just let them take you to the kitchen. If you guys want to go, you can go. So here's like this impromptu ghost hunt we're going on. So we're, yeah, we're going to go down there. So we went through the kitchen, down these stairs, and then we started going underneath the catacombs underneath this a restaurant now, which was a trading post, probably where they stored things. And sure enough, I kept saying, look up in the air, you're going to find this trap door. And we found it. So then the people in the restaurant that owned it now were so excited that they have history in their restaurant that they didn't even know about.
Yeah. Yeah, and those tunnels were probably used by Chinese workers.
Exactly. Most of all the towns along Route 66 it was built along the railroad pretty much. And so when they would build the cities, they would have, workmen, and a lot of times they were Chinese workmen that would work on the railroads. They weren't allowed to be on the streets after dark. So they would use the tunnel system, to visit their friends, to visit their businesses. So that's why there's so many tunnels. And most of them are collapsed now for the most part. I know in Flagstaff, because of colleges and everything up there, the tunnels are no longer working. But like all of them had them. Holbrook had them, and Winslow, Williams, all those towns had the tunnel system. So it's kind of cool to be able to go down in them.
And you've mentioned Winslow a couple of times. Winslow is made famous by the Eagle song, and there's actually a statue on the corner in Winslow.
There is, and yeah, the standing on the corner in Winslow, Arizona. Perfect. Yes, that's exactly where it is, and everybody goes there to stand by that little statue now. It's the most popular thing I think in the whole town.
Yeah, and one thing I liked about the book too is you have a lot of pictures in there. So when you're talking about these places, you can actually see there's a picture of the statue in there, and then there's also a picture of the tunnels that you were just talking about.
Yeah. We try to put as many pictures in there as we can, because that's, I think, too, which really makes a book, because you're reading about it, you get to see it. And so my friends that traveled with me, I said, take as many pictures as you want. We'll go pick through there and find ones that interest everybody. And my friend, he did the cover. We were driving there on the western part of Arizona on the real Route 66. So when you see that picture, that is the real Route 66. And he happened to snap that picture, and when we were going back to the photos, I go, this is the cover. This is what I want people to see, that Arizona still has actual Route 66.
Yeah. One of the stories that caught my attention in the book that I just thought was kind of neat, because it's not something that you hear a lot of, is the legend of the Pearl Burrow.
Oh, yeah. Well, they have all those burrows in Oatman, Arizona. If you ever go to Oatman, it's an old mining town. And I guess, yeah, there was the White Burrow. And the legend is that, him and the owner were out mining, and one of them never came back. And so now the burrow's still looking for the owner. The owner's still looking for the burrow. So you're always on the lookout for the White Burrow. And every once in a while you see one in town. Of course, I think they just kind of wander in from the hills. It makes you wonder, is this the ghosty one, or is this just one from out there?
Yeah, you don't get there are animal spirit stories out there, but you just don't get a whole lot of them. So I like those.
I try to put a mixture in all my books, a little bit of everything, so that there's something for everybody out there. I try to put a little bit of, UFO in there, maybe a little bit of ghosts, a little bit of, Native American legend. I try to put a little bit of everything, because not everybody wants to read the same old thing. They want a variety.
Yeah, and it makes it interesting. It's not just ghost story after ghost story. It's a lot of different things in there, and learning a lot of different things, because the legends, I think, are just as important as the ghost stories.
Yeah, the legends. And I always try to make it known that this is a legend that I learned. It could be real, it could not be real, but, if it's for you to decide, you have to do that too.
And you wrote about some curses as well in the book. And the one that I found interesting, because I've heard about this from different places, specifically in Middle Tennessee where I live, we have the Belle Witch Cave, which is, everybody knows, famous around the world. And it's kind of the same story. Many people who have taken rocks or arrowheads or whatever from the Belle Witch Cave send them back because they always have some sort of bad luck.
Yeah, that's the same thing like the Petrified Forest. here near Holbrook. Exactly, because I don't know, like I said, I didn't know if that was something that was really happening, or they figured if everybody that went through there took a piece of the petrified, rock home, pretty soon there would be nothing there. But yeah, people often say, that have stolen a rock that they send them back because, okay, we took a rock and now we had a flat tire the next day. The engine blew out. I got home and lost my business. So they actually send all the rocks back, and they have a big rock pile, so people can redeem their peace of mind once again. But yeah, that's a legend. You don't steal nothing from the petrified forest ever,
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah, and it's interesting how there are different places with similar stories like that.
Yeah,
Bridges
yeah,
are another
exactly.
one that have a lot of similar stories at different locations, kind of local legend, local folklore about these bridges or train tracks, that
Yeah, the
type of stuff.
train tracks. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, we found places where people were hit by trains, and we were like, "How could this happen?" Well, it turned out the one man was blind and deaf on one side, and that's the way the train was coming. He didn't even see it happening. And we went to that was kind of a really really neat place. We took a bunch of bridges where there were accidents off of bridges, and we could see how that would happen. Back in the day of Route 66, they were narrow highways. So there was always someone, passing and getting in accidents or going too fast, going off the road, speeding down the road. There was, blowouts and causing all kinds of havoc on that road.
Yeah, yeah, and also back then you didn't have seat belts and airbags and all these
Yeah,
other safety
no,
features.
yeah,
So
definitely no seatbelts, that's for sure. And so when you crashed and you got hurt really bad, most likely you didn't survive.
yeah. So what was your favorite place to go to along Route 66?
Oh gosh, I think the whole place was just really really interesting. I can't remember. I think maybe when we were in Holbrook and we got to go into the courthouse, and because of COVID, there was nobody there except for the four of us that were doing the road trip, and they pretty much just let us go anywhere we wanted in the courthouse. And that was kind of a neat experience. We ran into in the Native American room where some man who had visited prior had left an offering. And one of the girls in our group, like I said, is a counselor. And she said what he was doing basically was leaving an offering for new hope, for a better life, for a better happiness. And we explained that to the lady who was running the desk that day. And it made her feel better because she didn't know if he was putting a curse there or what.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to kind of, leave letting this lady have a little peace of mind. And it was kind of nice having this whole entire old courthouse to ourselves.
Did you all get to do an investigation?
We did a little bit in there, and basically is the Native American room because we kind of wanted to feel what was going on in that room, and then basically that's what my friend who was the counselor came up with, and basically we just kind of did a blessing then too to make sure that the building was going to be happy and secure as well. But it was neat. We got to go in the old jail where they had held prisoners and where there was murders. And, basically we just did a little bit of EDT sessions. Nothing exciting, but it was just kind of neat to have the building to ourselves and do what we wanted to do.
Yeah. What is some of the just in Arizona in general? Because you've covered Arizona in your books quite extensively, and being also living there.
hmm
What is some of your one of your favorite places, favorite haunted places in Arizona?
I would say Bisbee, Arizona. It's down south, west Arizona, kind of near Tombstone. They're probably half hour away from each other. I actually have a second home in Bisbee, right across the street from the cemetery, which makes it very convenient. And my house there has a spirit or two that pop in. One's a little girl, and one is a minor. And so that's kind of my favorite place, just because I have ghosts in the house, but the whole town is haunted because it's an old mining town. And so there's spirits as you're walking down the street. I remember going there oh gosh, probably 20, 30 years ago, walking through there late at night. And I'm seeing people walking around that weren't really there. And I remember being there on Halloween, and it was like being transport Halloween 100 years ago. And there was somebody with a giant pumpkin head on, frolicking down the street. There's always something going on in Bisbee. So that's probably one of my favorite places. Right now, I'm working on a book called Haunted Globe, and Globe is another old mining town, probably about an hour and a half east of Phoenix area. And that place too, I think, was crazier than Tombstone as far as murders. I'm finding, oh man, these people, they had showed no mercy back in the early 1900s. I mean, there were men going to the brothels, getting their hearts ripped out, and fighting going on all the time, murders on the streets as people were walking down the street. It was a crazy town. So I'm having a lot of fun with this book too. In fact, I'm going up there next weekend to gather some, kind of the last stories to kind of put the tail in on this book. Taking my little crew up with me again so we can get some good pictures and things like that.
Yeah, that sounds like fun to go check it out, and I love digging into the history as well.
That's a fun part. I have fun doing it. And then I get, like I said, I have so much fun looking up the history. Then I go down these little rabbit holes, and I know way too much about this person's family.
Right.
We don't need to go there, but it gets interesting. You feel like they're real characters in the book, then not just little made up stories.
Yeah, and sometimes you probably find more interesting stories and scandals and that type of stuff by going down those little rabbit holes.
Exactly. And then you come back and you come back to these owners of these shops, or people, the historians in town, or the folks there that do the paranormal events and ghost hunts, and you tell them, well, it didn't really happen like you've been saying, but it happened like this, according to the papers and the death certificates. And they're like, oh, but then I go back and check again, and they're actually telling the stories on a more correct level. So I feel like I did my job.
Yeah, a lot of the tour companies, they hire people to come in and tell these stories that have just been handed down, and at some point in time, it becomes the telephone game.
Exactly.
They get changed a little bit, and I like to go on the tours where the people actually have investigated the places and have their own experiences.
Right. Exactly. That makes it a little more. I feel more confident going on those kind of tours where I've known that they've investigated as well, or you go along as part of an investigation.
Yeah.
So you're learning and experiencing it at the same time. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of fun. I love doing events. I know y'all do events as well, where you have people come and investigate with you. I love doing that and seeing people who have never investigated before get to investigate and see what it's really about. And
then they're hooked.
yeah, and how they light up when the REM pod goes off, on its own, or catch an EVP or something. It kind of renews my excitement for the paranormal too.
I know. And, then, you got to explain to them, like, you don't see a spirit or a ghost every single time. I tell them, I've been doing this for 30-some years with my teams and such. And I probably only have seen maybe 6 spirits, and, it's full reality. I mean, I hear them sometimes. They've touched me, you smell them sometimes, but to actually see one standing there maybe 6 times, it's not like on TV.
Right. Yeah, and that's how I kind of start off the night too, is when we got everybody together before we break up into groups. I'm always like, this is not like TV, it's like fishing. Sometimes you catch something, sometimes you don't. And
that's exactly it. Yeah.
Every once in a while you get that one person that's just disappointed and doesn't let themselves have a good time, but for the most part, people are understanding and get it that, TV is more entertainment.
Yes, that's for sure. TV is the more entertainment aspect of it. But, it does kind of get people excited and wanting to go out there and try. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, I do as well. I think it's great because it gets these people interested in coming to these historical locations where maybe they wouldn't just go do a tour normally.
Yeah, exactly. I like watching the shows and seeing where they go,
Yeah.
and especially if it's a place that I've already been. And then I like to see, well, what are they going to come up with? Are they going to see the same thing I did? So when they come up with the same kind of theories and ideas that I've experienced, then I go, okay, this is a legit story. Yeah, good, 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 good. But sometimes those stories get a little, like I said, it's for entertainment, for the most part. So sometimes they get a little, I would say, enhanced.
Yeah, I remember the first time that I saw ghost hunters go to a place that I had been to before them, and
Hmm.
I was really excited because I'm like, I've been there, and so what? Then watching it on TV was crazy because I'm like, I know exactly where they're going. That's
Mhm.
insane.
It is kind of fun to watch it like
Yeah,
that, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
But yeah, after doing this for 25 years, I love doing the events because, like I said, it for me after 25 years, it just kind of re-energizes me for the paranormal and
Exactly.
trying to tell people like you don't have to be a serious investigator. You don't have to have an investigation team. Just go to these events and have a good time with it.
Yeah, exactly. I do that now more than I used to. I like going to other people's events now, so I don't have to do all the thinking. I can kick back and enjoy too.
Yeah,
Before, when you run an event, you got to be like, you have to be like totally into what everybody's doing and where everybody's at. And sometimes you don't get to experience because you're trying to make everybody else enjoy the experience. So now it's gotten to the point where now I sometimes take the time to go to other people's events and let them share their ideas and their theories with me, and then I can kind of sit back and relax and feel the energies and experience what is really going on.
yeah,
So it's kind of nice to do it half and half like that now.
yeah. I like to do the same thing. I like to see how other people do their events and how they engage
Yeah,
with people, and yeah, that whole thing too is it kind of. And then
yeah,
some of that I might incorporate into my own events.
yeah, exactly. And sometimes you even work with another team or something and do an event together, and that's always kind of fun too.
Yeah, I love the paranormal in general. I love that I get to do it for a living now. It makes me very happy after 20 years in the medical field. So happy to get out of
Yeah.
that and do just the paranormal.
Yes, I enjoy writing very, very much. I never thought that it was always my dream to be an author, but now I can actually say I am an author.
Yeah.
You get a 5 or 6, 7 books, and you're like, okay, yeah, that's what I am, and that's what I do. So people come to me and ask me questions all the time about things. So it's kind of fun being able to be a resource.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm starting to get that as well with doing the podcast of my name
Yeah.
kind of getting out there and people want me to come on their shows and talk and I love it. I love it.
I had a lot of fun this past fall with the Route 66 book being out, and promoting the book and doing book signings and different podcasts and oh goodness, I was busy every week in doing these things. And it is fun, and I learn things from their stories. When I'm talking to the people that I'm giving stories to, so you learn from everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it never stops. Yeah, it never stops.
And I've learned that, the paranormal community in general is pretty awesome. Pretty good people.
Yes, definitely. They all want to help each other. They all want to share their idea. I just wish I could travel more and go to bar events.
Yeah.
With COVID, that was kind of tough, but I'm planning this year on making a few events. And they're mostly on the East Coast for some reason. We don't have that many out west.
Yeah.
Very few. Very, very few. And so all the good ones were all the so-called paracelebs they're all on the East Coast because that's where they all live. So
Yeah.
I'd love to be, I'd love to be able to, make it out to the East Coast and from the West going that way and visiting more of that their aspects of things. We usually go to what we call cemetery camp every summer, which basically I'm a cemetery preservationist. So it's a preservation conference, but we call it cemetery camp. And they're usually on the East Coast too. So I love going to those and taking the time while we're seeing all these very historic cemeteries and then visiting some of the historic haunted places in the areas as well.
Yeah, I'm always a paranormal tourist. So every year when I go on vacation, a couple times, I'm always I went this year we went to Tybee Island, so I went around Savannah, so that's always fun.
So you have to stay, like I said, you have to stay at the haunted hotels. You have to dine at the haunted restaurants. Go to all the cemeteries. Everything in our list when we're traveling has to. Okay, what's the theme?
Yeah.
Where are we going?
All right, Debbie. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show today. I've had a really good time talking to you.
Oh, it was fun. It was fun. We talked a little bit about everything about Arizona, and it was great. Like I said, people need to come to Arizona, explore it more and more.
Yeah, it's a beautiful state, and you've got so much out there with the Grand Canyon and Meteor Crater Park and the Petrified Forest, and there's just so many things to do and see.
Yeah, all the Wild West, like Tombstone and all those places too. It's best place to go.
All right, everybody. You can check out all of Debbie's books on Amazon Kindle or at mvdghostchasers.com. MV as in Victor D. Ghostchasers.com. And also they can find you on all the social medias.
Yes. I'm on Facebook probably the most. You can find me on Facebook working on and off all day under Debe Branning.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there. Join us next time for a new episode of The Unseen Paranormal. Until then, head over to the Unseen Paranormal Lounge on Facebook for all the latest updates and discussions about the show. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, or at unseenparanormalpodcast.com. And please rate, review, share, and subscribe to help more people discover the show. The Unseen Paranormal Podcast is proud to be the ambassador for paranormal for Verbal.com. A big thank you to my friend Chris Lips for the awesome theme music. You can find more of his music on Apple, Amazon, or Spotify. And as always, thank you for listening. To the end of the line. Whoa. I can feel you as you pass the other side.